Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we talk about all things movies. Welcome especially if you're new. If you enjoy talking about movies and staying up to speed on what's in theaters and what's worth checking out, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos. Alright, with that we're going to jump right on into today's review, which is for Thor Love and Thunder. And this is going to be a spoiler review, so spoiler warning, if you haven't seen it, go out and see it and come back when you've seen it and you're ready to talk spoilers. But because it's a spoiler review, we're just going to skip the synopsis. I'm assuming you've seen the movie and that you know what it's about, and we're just going to dive right on in. So we're going to mainly just kind of go through each of the characters, and I'm going to share some thoughts on them and then talk about the movie in general. But first up, we have Thor. I thought that, yeah, in this movie, Chris Hemsworth is like in peak fitness for what we've seen. Kudos to him. That's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of commitment and time and like self-control to diet and exercise to get to that point. So it certainly paid off. He looks phenomenal and he's in great shape. But as far as the character of Thor goes, I thought that they're doing a good job of continuing to make these stories fresh around Thor. So we're 4 movies in. This is the first MCU hero to get a 4th solo film. So I think you do have to kind of shake things up, which, yeah, they're continuing to do. So I think sometimes that means that it's maybe not as good as what we saw before, or it's at least different, and then you kind of pick what your favorite is. So I think overall, I enjoyed his story arc in this one, but I don't like it as much as, say, what we got in Thor Ragnarok. But I thought that, it's a natural character progression, though. It's following off of the events of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Thor is still, yeah, trying to discover himself and fill the voids that have been left by all of the people that he's cared about, yeah, leaving his life. For the most part, he's filled some of that void, but so I thought that, yeah, it's a good character arc that we get throughout the film. I think he learns to let people in because he's at the point at the beginning where he's just closing people off, and that's his response to it. And it takes Jane coming back into his life to force him or to get him to let people back in. So I liked the character progression. It's an interesting balance of being like you see elements of the Thor that we got in like the first 2 Thor movies of a more serious and kind of sophisticated Thor, and then that's balanced with the more silly side that Taika Waititi's brought to this character. So it's an interesting balance. It's definitely a sort of dichotomy, but I think it works. And it's a lot more fun to have a funny version of Thor. We'll just leave it at that. Moving on to the next main character, it's going to be Jane Foster, or the Mighty Thor. And I thought that they did a good job with her character. Having not been present in the last film or like any of the Avengers films, we haven't seen her since the second Thor movie. And I thought they did a good job of writing the story in a way that makes sense. And yeah, and I thought that I don't know. I think that there have been other couples on screen that have had a lot more chemistry than Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth. But I think they're both so likable that there's just a natural, yeah, like I think like anybody would like them, and you just like them individually as characters. That at least for me, I like them as a couple, even though it's not as it's a little different than other couples that maybe feel a bit more organic. But getting a bit more of the backstory and seeing them like spending time together and like dressing up for Halloween and stuff like that, I think seeing a bit more of the relationship helps a lot to buy into the fact that there was a relationship there instead of just speaking to it, which is kind of what we've gotten in previous films. But then I think the direction that they went, or why they explained why they drifted apart, made perfect sense. I mean, for both of them, life got busy, and yeah, so I liked how they explained that. The one thing I didn't really care for was, again, it's the marketing for a Marvel film that wrecks part of the film. So we got to see her entrance in the as Mighty Thor in the trailer, and so I was kind of hoping we would see an initial transformation in this film, especially when she gets to Mjolnir and it's starting to respond to her. But no, that it cuts away, and the next thing we get is her entrance, and it was not as effective having already seen it in the trailer that they dropped. But other than that, I thought that Natalie Portman pulled off Mighty Thor very well. I mean, like, I'm not familiar with the comic, so it's not a character that I'm necessarily familiar with prior, but I bought into the fact that she was Thor, and I think that, yeah, she played the part very well. She definitely looks a little bit older. I did notice that, but, you know, people not to say that Natalie Portman looks old, but she certainly looks older than, like, you know, her time in the Star Wars prequels. But I think that's a good thing, though. Like, I think it shows that she's been pouring her life into her work as a scientist in this universe. So I was definitely surprised that when it revealed that she had cancer. I thought that was a really, like, great part of the story, and it formed a core of the story. And yeah, her eventually basically giving up her life and saying, yeah, I'll die to cancer to save Thor, and it's mainly for Thor, but in the process also saving the children that Gore had captured. So I thought that, yeah, they did a good job with her character. Other characters, I thought Valkyrie and Korg. Well, we'll do one each individually. I thought Valkyrie was fine. I liked her a lot better in Ragnarok, but I thought she was fine here. She definitely doesn't really fit the role of being King of Asgard, as far as, like, she just doesn't seem like she wants that responsibility, and that comes across in this. She's more than happy to go with them on their adventure. But I thought that it was interesting to see Korg's screen time significantly increased in this film. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. I think he was a fan favorite of Ragnarok, but even given that, I was surprised at how much he was in this film. But I thought when he lost, like, his body and they were just walking around with his face, I thought they were going to do something kind of similar to the God of War video game, and which in and of itself in that game is like a Norse god or Norse mythology reference. I thought they were going to, like, hang Korg by the waist of Thor and just have this, like, head dangling off his belt or something as he's, you know, going around adventuring. But they didn't go that route. They decided to tie him to the back of Valkyrie's head. But yeah, Korg was fun. I thought it was an effective way to have him kind of narrate the backstory to get people up to speed who maybe aren't big time Marvel fans and fully aware of where we're at in the story of this character. Up next, we have the villain. I thought that Gore, the God Butcher, was he was a very interesting villain. I missed, like, an initial part of the movie because they gave me the wrong 3D glasses. They gave me the ones for a regular 3D movie and not an IMAX 3D. So I had to step out for, like, a minute or two between the start of the film and when the Marvel logo rolled. So I missed, like, just a piece of his backstory, which I think would have helped the character even more. But I don't know. I think he is fairly similar to Scarlet Witch in that he's a good individual that is then corrupted by some evil, like, power or curse. So I thought that I didn't necessarily care for that similarity because these movies come right after each other in the MCU release order. But other than that, I thought Christian Bale did a really good job. He acts as a character that I haven't seen him act as before, and just comes across as very menacing. I really liked the, like, black and white that they introduced into the film. Like, this is a very colorful film, so it's even more effective when you have the villain who's in the shadows and basically is, like, lives on a planet of black and white. And I thought that was really cool to have color emerge into those scenes through the weapons, whether that was Stormbreaker or Mjolnir or the Thunderbolt. Got to get that name right, otherwise Zeus will not be happy. So, but yeah, I thought that Gore was done well, and I liked that. I thought it was really interesting in the end. So they had me convinced, especially with all the fake deaths throughout the film. Like, we got, like, Korg was killed, but then he wasn't, and then Valkyrie was stabbed, and then she wasn't. So keep this in mind. In the MCU, if you're stabbed, like in the stomach, whether you're Spider-Man or Valkyrie, you're not gonna get killed. So I think that's just a rule. Coulson got stabbed in the stomach as well, and he's walking around. So that's yeah, just because you get stabbed doesn't mean you die. And Zeus like bolt through his like gut. Like I don't know how he was alive at the end. That was my biggest issue with this film, was how many fake deaths they had, and well, I mean, they did it as well with Jane a bit, because I mean, she dies, but she goes to Valhalla, so it's not, you're like, okay, well, she's happy now. I don't feel too bad. But I was thoroughly convinced that they were setting up for Thor to get to eternity first, and for him to wish that Jane be healed. And so when she, like, as she's dying and as she makes her final sacrifice, that didn't have the impact it should have had on me, because I assumed that she wasn't going to die. So I think that scene and her sacrifice will hit me a lot harder on a rewatch when I know that it's actually a sacrifice. But I liked how they set it up, though, where Gore could make the choice. Like, for a second there, I thought even Gore might make that choice and be like, well, if I bring my daughter back, she'll have nobody, and I at least see that Thor loves Jane, and I'm going to wish that she is saved. Because also, another kind of inconsistency, I don't know how he was worthy to pick up Stormbreaker, unless he's just a good human being who's now afflicted by a curse. That seemed a little bit inconsistent. I'm not really sure why he was worthy enough to pick up Stormbreaker, but I just went with it. And but that kind of like it was that line of thinking that I was like, I bet he's not going to wish for his daughter to come back and he's going to save Jane. But that's not what happened. But it was the fact that it had me thinking that that's where they were going to go speaks to how good the character, like how well the character is written, in my opinion. So I liked the villain for this one. Next up we have Zeus. I thought he was fine. It was definitely, it seemed like a part that Russell Crowe just had fun with. And that's pretty much everybody in this movie. It's just a lot of fun, and it seems like that's what the actors had. Christian Bale as well. But it was not as big of a part as I was expecting, and certainly not what I was expecting out of Zeus. I'm not familiar with how his character is done in the comics, but that was certainly interesting. But there again, I was upset. I was shocked when they killed him, and then I was thoroughly upset when they brought him back in the credit scene and he's not really dead. I'm like, can we just, like, it's Marvel fake death universe, that's what we have, I guess. So I mean, it's nothing new at this point, but it makes things a lot less effective when you make your movies that way, we'll just say that. But otherwise, it was nice to see the Guardians of the Galaxy in there for a little bit. Same with Darcy and Dr. I think it's Zellwig, that's what it is. But yeah, so it was nice. Not a big part of the film, and I think that's what it should have been. I like the overall story, and I thought it was very interesting where they take Thor's character, and that he's now a dad. Going back to the beginning when Korg is narrating, he's like, went from dad bod to God bod, and then now at the end of the film he goes from God to dad, and I thought that was, yeah, it'll be interesting if that is something that they explore in the next movie, or if it just kind of develops off screen, and then when we see him in the next movie it'll be some other storyline. But I'd be interested to see a movie about Thor the dad raising his girl. That'd be a fun movie, I think. So, but yeah, other minor criticisms. I thought the action was filmed just it was a little weak on the action. I mean, when you've got other things like Winter Soldier setting the bar for like top-notch action in a Marvel film, I thought a lot of the fights were kind of quickly edited, and it was, that's my one nitpick, but that's okay. A lot of the fights still looked very epic, and you had a lot of special effects in there, so it made up for that, I think. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is a really fun film, maybe just a little too silly, in my opinion, for it to be like one of my favorite MCU films. So I think it's hard to tune that dial like perfectly, and I think they err on the side of just being a little too silly. But thoroughly fun time beginning to end. I did enjoy this movie a lot. I'd give it an A. I think it's probably in like the, if I'd have to look at my list, but it probably falls like a third of the way down my list from the top for MCU films if I had to guess. So in the upper half, but not quite in the upper quarter. But yeah, it's a fun film. I think it's the second best Thor film in my opinion. It's not as good as Ragnarok, but it does a lot of. I thought it had a lot of heart and a lot of story, a lot of good story, and was just a lot of fun. So it was great to see this in theaters with a lot of other fans in the theater. Everybody was laughing basically the entire time through, even in scenes that are rather serious. There's like little things that just make it funny. So yeah, this was a good time at the theater. It's one that I recommend. If you've had a chance to see the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What's your favorite Thor movie? Are you happy with the direction that they're taking this character? Or would you rather see him kind of go back to his roots? I am personally, I think while I liked Ragnarok better, I prefer that they are exploring new sides of this character. So even though this isn't my favorite Thor movie, I think it's very fresh, and I'm happy that they're continuing to do fresh stuff for the character. So share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this review, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you stay up to date on all my reviews when they post. Alright, with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.